They're a hallmark of horror, dating back within European folklore for hundreds of years. Undead creatures that would prey on their victims, they still fascinate in our present day. And yes, even in the histories of Middle-earth, these famed beings would have an incarnation. Today on Nerd of the Rings, we cover Thuringwethil and the vampires of Middle-earth. Throughout history, vampires have fascinated and horrified people around the world, particularly in Western Europe, where the term was first popularized. In the 1700s, there were reports of mass hysteria around vampiric folktales of southeastern and eastern Europe. This panic would go so far that suspected vampires would have their corpses stabbed with stakes. And while the classic iteration of vampires would first be made popular by 1819's The Vampire by John Polidori and Bram Stoker's Dracula in 1897, J.R.R. Tolkien would use this creature in his own writings as well. The first instance comes in the Lay of Luthien, a prose version of the tale of Beren and Luthien. Here we meet for the first time Thuringwethil. She is described as a vampire servant of Sauron during his time ruling Tol-in-Gaurhoth. Notably, this tale prominently features another staple of horror stories throughout history: werewolves. Though, as we've covered elsewhere, these were not the transforming at the full moon kind of werewolves. As for Thuringwethil, she is shown in multiple versions of this tale, having been killed when Luthien and Huan attacked Sauron at his fortress. It is believed she was either killed by Huan himself during his fights with the werewolves and Sauron, or when Luthien brings down the fortress itself. We are told Thuringwethil had served as Sauron's messenger, presumably bearing news back and forth between Morgoth and Angband and his chief servant. With her demise, Luthien would disguise herself as the vampire and give Beren the form of Draugluin, the father of werewolves, enabling them to sneak into Angband in an attempt to steal a Silmaril from Morgoth's crown. And it is here that we see the Dark Lord confront Luthien in disguise. "Thy name, thou shrieking waif, thy name. Tidings enough from Thu where came. But short while since, what would he now? Why send such messenger as thou? Thuringwethil I am, who cast a shadow o'er the face aghast of the sallow moon in the doomed land of shivering Beleriand. Liar art thou, who shalt not weave deceit before mine eyes. Now leave thy form and raiment false, and stand revealed and delivered to my hand." There came a low and shuddering change. The bat-like raiment, dark and strange, was loosed and slowly shrank and fell. Quivering, she stood revealed in hell. About her slender shoulders hung her shadowy hair, and round her clung her garment dark where glimmered pale the starlight caught in magic veil. Dim dreams and faint oblivious sleep fell softly thence in dungeons deep. An odor stole of elven flowers from elven dells where silver showers dripped softly through the evening air, and round there crawled with greedy stare dark shapes of snuffling hunger dread, with arms upraised and drooping head. Then softly she began to sing a theme of sleep and slumbering, wandering woven with deeper spell than songs wherewith in ancient dell. Melian did once the twilight fill, profound and fathomless and still. The fires of Angband flared and died, smoldered into darkness through the wide, and hollow halls there rolled unfurled, the shadows of the underworld. We see in this version Morgoth is not fooled by Luthien's disguise. He says that Thu an early name for Sauron, had been in correspondence quite recently, so why would he be sending word again so soon? While she declares herself Thuringwethil, Morgoth sees through the ruse and tells her to take off her disguise before Luthien works to put the court of Morgoth into an enchanted sleep. But what of this vampire's nature and form? And how does she compare to the classic depiction of these creatures? As expected, Tolkien would not merely copy the pulp culture version of vampires. Rather than a blood-sucking count of noble sophistication and seduction, Thuringwethil is a servant whose ability to fly is used for communication purposes. Still, there are hints that, like the popular version of vampires, Thuringwethil's bat-like appearance was only one of her forms. In the Silmarillion, we read of Huan and Luthien. He turned aside therefore at Sauron's Isle, as they ran northward again, and he took thence the ghastly Wolfheim of Draugluin, and the Batfell of Thuringwethil. She was the messenger of Sauron, and was wont to fly in vampire's form to Angband, and her great-fingered wings were barbed at each joint's end with an iron claw. Clad in these dreadful garments, Huan and Luthien ran through Tar Nufuin, and all things fled before them. First off, we find that Thuringwethil, whose name means she of the secret shadow, was wont to fly in vampire's form, meaning this was a habit, but one that she chose, implying that she could take on other forms. However, as always, we must be diligent when interpreting lines of Tolkien's writings. He is not saying that a vampire could change forms. He is saying that Thuringwethil, whatever type of being she may be, could take on the form of a vampire. In another version, he calls her a bat-shaped fae. These phrases have led many to believe that Thuringwethil, like Sauron, could have been one of the Maiar, capable of taking on different forms. Another popular option is that Thuringwethil is instead some kind of Beorn-like skin changer, capable of going from human to vampire bat form at will. Going back to the text, we also find further details of Thuringwethil's vampire form, having great fingered wings which at the end of each joint was an iron claw. Notice the similarity here to another creature of darkness, the Balrogs. As we covered in my recent video on Tolkien's evolution of these demons, they were described as having claws of steel. So, like his werewolves, Tolkien's vampires are indeed a large creature of a particular form, in this case a gigantic bat, who together with a werewolf would make all things flee before them, Luthien and Huan, and later Luthien and Beren, in their disguises. But Thuringwethil would not be the only being in Middle-earth to take on this bat shape of a vampire, for Sauron himself was likewise a shapeshifter. When Huan had defeated his werewolves, the servant of Morgoth would take on the form of a werewolf himself, engaging in a great battle with the Hound of Valinor, a battle first described once again in the Lay of Luthien. Like ghosts, the owls were flying seen, hooting in the dawn, and bats unclean went skimming dark through the cold airs, shrieking thinly to find new lairs. In deadly nightshades branches dread, the wolves whimpering and yammering fled. Like dusky shadows, out there creep, pale forms and ragged as from sleep, crawling and shielding blinded eyes, the captives in fear and in surprise, from dolor long in clinging night, beyond all hope set free to light. A vampire shape with pinions vast, screeching leaped from the ground and passed, its dark blood dripping on the trees, and Huan 'neath him lifeless sees, a wolvish corpse, for Thu had flown to Tar Nufuin, a new throne, and darker stronghold there to build. Again, Tolkien would write another version of this tale that appears in the Silmarillion, where we see Sauron shift to more shapes than just a vampire. Then Sauron shifted shape from wolf to serpent, and from monster to his own accustomed form. But he could not elude the grip of Huan without forsaking his body utterly. Ere his foul spirit left its dark house, Luthien came to him, and said that he should be stripped of his raiment of flesh, and his ghost be sent quaking back to Morgoth. And she said, "There everlastingly thy naked self shall endure the torment of his scorn, pierced by his eyes, unless thou yield to me the mastery of thy tower." Then Sauron yielded himself, and Luthien took the mastery of the isle and all that was there, and Huan released him, and immediately he took the form of a vampire, great as a dark cloud across the moon, and he fled, dripping blood from his throat upon the trees, and came to Tar Nufuin, and dwelt there, filling it with horror. Interestingly, in the first prose version of the tale, there seems to be an implication that there were multiple creatures that used these great bat wings to fly as Sauron's messengers. Here it talks of the bat corpse brought for Luthien's disguise. The other was a bat-like garb, with mighty fingered wings a barb, like iron nail at each joint's end, such wings as their dark cloud extend, against the moon when in the sky, from deadly nightshades screeching fly, Thu's messengers. While appearing in various versions of Tolkien's tale, and the form even being used by Sauron himself, we know very little of the vampires of Middle-earth. Thuringwethil was indeed a messenger, and possibly not the only vampire to serve this role. And while we can only guess whether any of these creatures survived the downfall of Morgoth, they no doubt struck a frightful form, filling the people who would encounter them with horror. As always, I want to say a huge thank you to all my Patreon and YouTube supporters who make this channel possible. CCDC Red Team, Evil Chameleon, Tom DeBombadil 19, Lissamy the Cinda, Rabbi Rob Thomas, Charles Leisure, Joe Tepper, The Mighty Mim, Andrew Carlisle, Swirled Traveler, Matthew Jeffrey, Viking Lord, Alvin Einbert, Jeremy Daniel Derby, Madame Director, Freya Firestar, Chris and Meg Q, Leo Vittori, Sky Carcass, Slide Belts, Dane Ragnarsson, Berto Berg, Graham Derricott, The Dark-Haired One, Wyland, Kiara Berlin, Z and N, Evely, Kia, Landry Quinn Walker, Ice Glazer, Micah Wu, and Debbie. If you enjoyed the artwork in this video, check out the artists in the description to purchase prints of their great work for yourself. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time on Nerd of the Rings.